This is where the fun begins.
I have fought the worst of all wars and witnessed the redemption of evil. I have seen balance restored to the Force. But order can turn to chaos, as it did when I was born. Now, with my loved ones and my loyal allies, I face a new challenge unlike any before. And I'm not sure this time we can win.
Star Wars Vector Prime by R.A. Salvatore, the first novel of the new Jedi Order.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking EU. This is specifically an interview with Expanded Universe fans and Star Wars fans. And today I have Orange Hat Review in the hot seat, which I like to call the hot seat. It's not necessarily that. But he is coming in, and we're going to experience Star Wars through his eyes. And, I'm going to ask a series of questions. That's the standard here, and maybe some fun quizzes too as well. And I see everybody's hopping on. So hello, everyone. So thank you guys for hopping on, and thank you, Orange Hat, for being here. Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well,
yourself, yeah.
I'm Orange Hat Reviews. I do entertainment review, movie reviews. I cover controversial Hollywood stuff. I do guest choice reviews where other channels can come on to my channel to talk movies. I do mystery reviews every Tuesday where I give hints throughout the week. And I also am a humongous Star Wars fan of the old EU.
Mm-hmm.
Screw Disney. Been just hanging out with other channels too. See a few of them are in the chat right now. I also do other I'm on other channels. On Tuesday night, I'm on Society Reviews channel where we do the Barroom podcast. And guest choices is where you guys get to pick, or if a guest wants to come on, they get to pick the time, the date, and the movie. And it's purely for their convenience. We get to talk. The last one I did was last night at this time with Cult Classic Cage, who's in the chat right now. We talked East of Eden, which is a great movie starring James Dean. And looking forward to talking EU. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, OG.
Yeah, thank you so much. And those who are joining, please follow me on Rumble. I have linked or synced my YouTube channel with Rumble. So go ahead and find me there and subscribe as well. And I'll be, of course, using both platforms together. So just a little bit of expanding out there, since YouTube, sometimes, hiccups or throws out little shocking mishaps that, copyrights or whatever that you have to deal with and stuff. And I know what copyrights are and stuff. So I try to follow things as well as I can. So find me on Rumble, find my merch page on Redbubble as well. I have some wonderful merch there as well. Do you have a merch, any merch?
No, I do not. Not yet.
All right. So just making sure, because if you do, then we can throw that out there as well. So go ahead and find that. And if you're catching the replay, thank you for watching. And thank you guys for all tuning in as well. So let's get into this. I had such a wonderful day, and now I'm happy to sit down and chat with you now about Star Wars. So what is your very first Star Wars movie you watched?
It was actually the original trilogy back in 1987. I was 2 years old. It was that impactful. I was just sitting on the floor watching all of them. I can remember all the emotions that I felt, the wonder, the fear from Darth Vader because he was scary at the time.
Mm-hmm.
When they went into hyperspace for the first time, it's like, wow. I mean, that's just something that nobody's ever seen before. Well, for a 2-year-old anyway, that is seriously the greatest thing on earth. and I've been a fan ever since. I mean, I've grown up. My dad had the original action figures. In fact, I got 3 of them right here. These are some of the action figures that I played with as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I managed to save these 3 because the rest of them, unfortunately, have not survived the test of time. But yeah, I've grown up loving Star Wars, and I saw the special edition in '97 for A New Hope, which was pretty cool to see.
Okay. Awesome. And then so with the OT, since that's your first, like, so you watched it in order when you were little. So your very first one basically would be Star Wars at the time, now called A New Hope. So with that, with the OT, who is your favorite character in the OT and why?
Yoda, because it was when I was younger, he just really latched on the funny way he talked, the wisdom and how he taught. It was, or even at a younger age, I mean, not at 2, obviously, but even though I watched it when I was younger and growing up and still catching into it, when I was around 6 years old, I was understanding the more nuanced way of how he was doing things. And one of the things I really liked about Yoda is he had, at that time, a deceptive way of teaching. He was testing Luke to see if he was patient enough to undergo what was going to be his training regimen. And when he died in episode 6, Return of the Jedi, it's like, oh my God, I cry every time because the music is so beautiful. John Williams' score is phenomenal.
Yeah. So with Yoda, since you know that that he became your favorite character, why was he your favorite character, like in depth? Why? And then how did you think about him when you first witnessed him and how he was testing Luke at the time and how he was acting? What do you think about him then?
Honestly, when I first saw him at 2 years old, I thought he was just this funny, small little, gremlin, to be honest, because I also saw Gremlins at a young age too. And he was just so funny to watch. He was one of the things that I really laughed and liked about Star Wars. He wasn't in the original, but he was in Empire Strikes Back, and that to this day is still my favorite of all 3. But Yoda, he just had a grandfatherly wisdom, and my grandfather, alive at the time, he always reminded me of my grandfather in a way, because my grandfather gave out wisdom and whatnot too. And I just really loved how he would push buttons, but also get serious when he needed to.
Yeah. And of course, we have Soul Assassin here. Thank you so much for coming and modding. But Yoda is the child of Miss Piggy and Kermit. Yeah. So that's very interesting. So usually with people, when I interview or talk with people, usually it's Han or Luke. We do sometimes get a wedge in there, that's no pun intended. And, sometimes it's another, but, not necessarily too many people have said, oh, Yoda became my favorite from the beginning. So I find that very interesting, very intriguing. So with that, we'll go into the PT. What was your first PT movie? Did you start from The Phantom Menace and go on through? All right. Yeah. So what was your favorite movie character from that, and why?
When it came to The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, I knew Yoda was going to be in it because I remember exactly where it was when I saw the trailer for The Phantom Menace. I was going to see the movie 10 Things I Hate About You. And I saw the Phantom Menace trailer, and it's like, oh my God, this is so great. And I was wondering, who the heck is the hippie Jedi? Because that's exactly what I said. It's like, who the heck is this hippie Jedi,
Yeah.
Because Qui-Gon Jinn had longer hair, plus my uncle had longer hair at the time, who
Mhm.
he kind of from the hippie years, but it was just so great, and I couldn't wait to see it. And then when I did see it, I saw it with my mom, and she's like, "What does that mean?" Or she asked me a question, "What does that mean about the Sith during Qui-Gon's funeral, or the Master and Apprentice line?" And at that time, we hadn't really learned about Darth Bane or the Rule of Two. We've only known that there was only two Sith, a Master and an Apprentice, but which was destroyed, the Master or the Apprentice? Well, we all knew who it was, but I really loved that movie. Each of the movies, as flawed as a movie reviewer, you do catch the flaws. You do catch some of the things that could have been done a little bit better here or there, but you also do take into account somebody like me who was a Star Wars fan. You understand that this was Lucas's vision, how he envisioned these movies to be. Now, would he go back and probably see things differently? Sure. But honestly, when people all over the internet like to hate on Jar Jar Binks, it's like, I understand what his character is there for. Especially if you see the full trilogy in its full context, you understand this is one of the most tragic characters out there. And yes, he is a bumbling fool that was meant for being entertaining for kids, because that's when the studio started saying you can't go into a very dark route with these movies. Because we all know that Darth Jar Jar may be a joke for some people, but that was actually the plan that Lucas was going with. But yeah, and I immediately, or when I got the special edition for Star Wars, the original trilogy on VHS, you get the special features before the film on tape. And Dennis Muren said for the Return of the Jedi, it's sort of been a testing area. We're getting ready for the prequels. And I never really understood what that meant until my brother John pointed it out. And he's like, yeah, they're getting ready to do episodes 1, 2, and 3. I'm like, what do you mean? That's what prequel meant. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like, I didn't, because at that time, I was only like 13 or 14 at the time. So I hadn't really heard the word prequel yet. So it's like, okay, so that's interesting. And then I remember seeing the news. I mean, Howie Long was talking about how during the time that the special edition was out, you then see episode 1, 2, and 3 doing the Star Wars crawl with Howie Long talking about how these movies are now being planned. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. So with Jar Jar and stuff, just go more into further thought about how you see him as a tragic character. Just so you could share your thoughts about him with the people in the chat here watching today, because we do have people who are like really were off put by Jar Jar, which people take that off put of like, I really didn't care for Jar Jar, blah, 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 and George's decision with him as hating the prequel trilogy, which hating a character doesn't mean you hate the story or, or the trilogy or whatever they come from. It just means you don't care for a character. We all have a character we like and then we don't like as much. So go ahead and expand on Jar Jar a little bit more.
Well, Jar Jar is, a lot of people say he's just a bumbling fool. And it's like, he is one of the most well-intentioned bumbling fools. In a way, he's kind of responsible for saving Naboo in episode 1. If it wasn't for him being where he was at that time and his knowledge of where to go and such when they needed to form the alliance, he has a naivety about him, or a naivete about him. But when you bring him into episode 2, where he's a representative, a senatorial representative, they say, well, Jar Jar Binks, because it's more in the book where he's giving Palpatine emergency powers, he doesn't really see, or nobody knows that Palpatine's a Sith.
Correct.
And he did manipulate the most naive and well-intentioned senator who was not even corrupt, because he's only he was only a secondary representative for Naboo, and yet he was also still a senator, because they actually did have 2 senators for Naboo now that the Gungans wanted their representation in the Senate. And so he became their senatorial representative. He's as good as Amidala, maybe not as good as a politician. But when I saw that everybody's reporting on when the Republic became an empire, he was turned into a jester, essentially, and saying it's all my fault and whatnot. I'm like, that is the worst possible thing you could do to him, because this is a person who had the most honest intentions. He had no malice in him. And that is why he is so tragic, because he is literally an innocent character that was manipulated just as much in a way as Anakin was. Because, as I say, I do deep dives, and one of my favorite things from episode 1 was the music video for Duel of the Fates, which they put on all over the music channels at the time, MTV and VH1 and whatnot. And there's a line from Darth Maul: fear, or the whole fear attracts the fearful, the strong, the weak, the innocent. One of the things that it crosses is Jar Jar Binks. Yes, he's a very fearful character. He's afraid of everything, because he's even afraid of his own shadow. But he also has a knowledge about him that makes him a rather integral character as well.
Yeah. And that's the thing with Palpatine. He was so brilliant. Like, every single person that he dealt with was just a chess piece to move to get to the initial goal. And he was a master manipulator with everything. People do say that it was the Jedi Order's fault for Anakin falling. No, he used the Jedi Order to manipulate Anakin to really think that the Order hated him. They had Anakin's interest, his interest in their best, I got my tongue.
His best interest at heart.
Yeah, there we go. I'm tongue tied here. Been a long morning, been up early. But anyway, so they have his interest at their hearts. And so when they tell him you're not ready yet, or this is not ready for you yet, or blah, 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 he confides in Palpatine, and then Palpatine twists and turns that around to make it sound like they are just hating on him, and he's feeding his pride and all of that stuff. So I think it's really, really masterful how George written Palpatine to be that manipulator.
Oh,
and
yes.
He doesn't get much credit. Like, people will tear down his writing all the time. They're doing it right now, and I'm not getting into today's politics of Star Wars right now. This is all about you and classical Star Wars. And but he had masterful writing, masterful intentions. The scripts may have had like little hiccups here and there, but it doesn't destroy the story. Really, it doesn't.
And that's a thing that a lot of people like to actually critique about the prequel trilogy, was the writing was so bad and the dialogues was so bad. I don't like sand and whatnot. And yes, you do get those cringe lines. But if you actually pay attention to how the lines from the original trilogy and how some of that stuff was delivered back then, compare it to the prequel trilogy, yes, there's very different ways of how people were speaking and how things were doing. The way that I see it is, this is literally the golden age of civilization just before its fall. Yeah. So yes, people are going to speak in a more Shakespearean kind of way. And then you get the fall of the Republic, and people are no longer going to care about standing on ceremony, decor, or anything like that, where you did actually have a little bit of that with Leia in A New Hope. She did have that regality about her, and she's sort of a remnant, not so much a remnant, but a representative of that bygone era, because she actually still existed in the Senate when it was still around.
Yeah, and what's so interesting, since we do have a lot of focus now on the dark times leading up to the Rebel Alliance now in today's Star Wars, or if you want to call it that. But anyways,
Yeah.
that we see in the lore that during these critical ages that lead up to Leia becoming a senator, Mon Mothma was basically her mentor.
Yep. She
And
was, and a lot of people forget that when watching shows like, or the stuff that the idiots are doing right now,
yeah,
it is very, very well recorded and documented in the EU. This is that Mon Mothma actually, yes, she was a mentor to Leia, but in a way, there was a professional rivalry in a way, because at that time, before Leia became a senator, Mon Mothma was the youngest senator at the time, where then Leia becomes a senator at 16, which was so they had a nice little professional rivalry, but it never got in the way of what they were doing.
Yeah. And then so that's the beautiful thing, is people don't realize, you could really tell, like today, who really got involved in the EU or the story in this timeline that they're focusing on. And and so it's a little bit polarizing to Star Wars in general, and to the fans as well. So moving on, who was your favorite character in the I asked you that already in the PT?
In the PT, it still is Yoda.
Still is Yoda. Yeah, okay. That's why I was kind of hesitant. Is it still Yoda? If you could choose another one that stands next to Yoda.
In this case, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Okay, so go ahead and expand on Yoda now in the PT.
In episode 1, Yoda still had that kind of quirkiness in a way, because at the time they didn't have the digital Yoda put in. They still had him as a puppet.
Yeah.
And it was still great to see that on-set reference. When you have practical effects, that's the best kind of effects you can have. Because when you're acting against a digital creation, it's very hard to act with. So when Anakin is looking at Yoda in the chamber, when they're testing him, and he says, or your thoughts dwell on your mother and whatnot, afraid to lose her, I think. What does that have to do with anything? He's actually looking at the puppet.
Right.
And I absolutely love Yoda's response. What does that have to do with anything? Everything. And he literally lays out Anakin's path without knowing it. But for everybody who knows what happened to Anakin Skywalker, fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Well, we all know that Anakin has that fear inside him. Fear of being away from his mother. Fear of losing his mother. At that time, his mother was the main focus of his fear. Well, then after he's married to Padme, she becomes the focus of his fear. And a lot of people say, well, maybe Palpatine manipulated it. Actually, no. He knew about it because he orchestrated Anakin and Padme coming together. He knew the boy's feelings about her. And yet he also knew that these sort of things would plague Anakin.
Well, yeah, now, and that's the point. That's the thing too, is like he knew that Anakin had this fear, because we knew that Anakin was confiding, because Palpatine weaseled his way in as a quote unquote father figure in a sense. So he used that fear to help manipulate. So basically he knew that once he gets someone that he loves, because he wore his heart on his sleeve. And when we get into the Revenge of the Sith novel, that's what they talk about. That's what, when Obi-Wan is asked by them, like, would, and I'm not getting the quote, I'm paraphrasing it, but basically, he's asked, would, Anakin, do go above and beyond, his Jedi duty, and, with, considering friendship and stuff like that. And, basically Obi-Wan's like, yeah, he's that kind of person that will, go above and beyond, and not just stick to the Jedi code per se, but will act on protecting everybody he cares for.
Yep,
So
that
yeah.
was when I believe they were going to drop off Yoda for his transport to Kashyyyk,
Yeah.
because that whole scene was actually extended where he's saying, I believe, because Kenobi has so much wisdom, even in episode 3, it really comes through.
Right.
And that's the reason why Kenobi is my favorite, or my second favorite character in the OT or the PT, because his wisdom literally, there's a scene in the novel which is semi touched on in a deleted scene in the movie where Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Mace Windu are looking at the new restrictions on the new senatorial authority that is being granted to Palpatine over the Jedi Order. Well, Yoda and Mace are going at it and getting ready to argue immensely, and Obi-Wan's like, let's just take a step back here, folks.
Right.
And they're like, wait, what do you know about it? And he lets them know, it's like, we might be able to use this in a way, because this could actually be the best way to draw out the Sith. Not to mention, a lot of people forget that Obi-Wan's connection to the Force is rather, in some ways, greater than Yoda's. When he turns an impossible situation, like being on the Invisible Hands bridge, where he can sense even mechanical pulses in the Force, and he can tweak the Force just the tiniest bit, say, manipulating servos in the general's hand when he's about to swing a lightsaber, and that hand just pops open.
Yeah.
He also is connected so deeply to the Force at that moment. It's not him speaking. It's literally described in the novel. It's the Force speaking through him. That is something that is so interesting, because even though he is able to allow the Force to float through him that completely, he's still not able to stand against somebody as strong as Palpatine. Because Yoda tells him flat out, to fight this Lord Sidious strong enough, you are not.
Right.
But then even Yoda acknowledges that he's also not strong enough to face him, because in the novel, it actually states, among all of these things, good versus evil, Jedi versus Sith, the culmination of all of them versus each other, the Jedi just doesn't happen. And I love the thought. It's like, a problem this is. It was it's the funniest little quip, but it works too.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm curious, because you said, okay, Yoda from the beginning all the way into the PT, he's your favorite character of all time. And that's not necessarily so with Obi-Wan then? You just really, really, really like...
I did like Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness's character, I even cried when I learned of Alec Guinness's death. I mean, it's like, wow, that is kind of sad. I mean, I had a keyboard at the time, one that you could play music on, and I just went outside and just played the Jedi theme over and over a couple times when I heard that he passed away. And it's like, it just really is sad. That's kind of my way of saying farewell to somebody who impacted a lot of people in Star Wars and who are fans of it. I mean, Alec Guinness, he has the most iconic role in the film or in episode 4.
Correct. Yeah. And then, so when you heard about Ewan McGregor coming in as a young Obi-Wan, how did that make you feel, since you really adored Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan or Ben?
At the time, I didn't know much because I was only 14 when episode 1 came out. But his performance as a younger Obi-Wan, it really did. It's like, I can see him growing into Alec Guinness, but I gotta see where they take it in the next movies. And him, or the way that Alec Guinness, or not Alec Guinness, but Ewan, he deep dived into the performances of Alec Guinness in order to really drive his role. And that is another thing that I really loved it, because this was back during a time when it wasn't just a paycheck. This is a franchise that is going to inspire generations, that's going to affect generations to come. And he really had the passion to play this character. Ewan McGregor did a wonderful job under the direction of George Lucas for Obi-Wan Kenobi. And everybody who follows my channel, if you realized, when I saw the Kenobi series, it's not the same. I mean, this is seriously, you see a very key difference that Ewan McGregor is an actor that was happy to come in and be a part of Star Wars again, but it's like, did you not remember what you learned under George?
Yeah. And so, I had to ask that because, if I'm pretty sure you know about this, but how much Ewan McGregor basically studied and really got into the role of Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's in the making of. So that's a really good documentary of about Ewan McGregor really embodying how Alec really embodied Obi-Wan and how he brought out the character and stuff. So that's one thing. That's one good thing if you really want to get into behind the scenes and stuff like that. Go watch those making of PTs, the Phantom Menace, the Attack of the Clones, and of course Revenge of the Sith is the most iconic one. I love that one. So that has a lot of good stuff in there. Yeah.
I mean, they actually literally show you in those sort of special features, especially episode 3, when they're doing comparatives between Alec Guinness and Ewan McGregor. They go full on facial structure. They're doing makeup and whatnot to kind of make it plausible that Ewan McGregor can actually shift to Alec Guinness in a 20-year span. So, because a lot of people forget this, that these trilogies are 20 years or 19 or 20 years apart. And it's like, it's hard living on a dang desert planet if you're going from Ewan McGregor to Alec Guinness.
Exactly. And I just love how the EU expanded on that so much, and and how the twin sons age you and stuff like that on Tatooine and everything. All right, so is there anything you want to share about the 2 movies before we move on, in your perspective, or what you like and maybe you may not like? Because we do love things, and there's some things we're like, oh, that could have been done better. So if you want to go on further with the OT and PT to add a few more comments there, go ahead.
When it came to the original trilogy, there are certain things about the special edition that I wasn't quite fond of, because they did updated soundtracks and noise or sound department tracks as well. It's like, take what you have from the unspecialized edition, put it in the specialized edition, you have a better soundtrack. Because one of the things they did with the 1997 A New Hope was they turned Leia's blaster at the bridge into a shotgun, and I'm like, no, that doesn't work. That yikes. And one of the things I really thought was interesting was the improved version, or the improved musical sequence in Special Edition Return of the Jedi during the celebration. I mean, that was a much more, as much as I like Yub Nub and whatnot, the Ewoks, I love the Ewoks. A lot of people hate the Ewoks. I love the Ewoks because I also grew up on Ewoks and the Ewoks Battle of Endor. And it's just the musical sequence. That was the one thing that I didn't really connect with. That was the one thing that just didn't click with me. Also, the Jabba the Hutt's special edition musical number was greatly improved, because the having Sice Noodles or Puppet, I'm like, I'm just not buying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, the McClunky. I'm sorry, folks, but Han shot first. That is the one thing that they should have, or that is actually, I actually do disagree with George Lucas on some things here and there. yes, it is his product, and yes, he is essentially the god of the product. But there are a couple things that I do disagree with. He wanted to make Han not as, well, murderous, shall we say. But if you really do think about it, even though he shot first, he understood his life was at imminent threat. So, I mean, I could break that down. But, I mean, because honestly, it's like this dude's going to freaking fry him and then bring him to Jabba. So he's going to shoot first and not ask questions later. So, but yeah, that is one thing that I didn't really like in the special edition. And every version, or I also don't like the updated Wampa. The updated Wampa was too different from what you see out in the snow when the Wampa attacks Luke. I mean, you can definitely see that there's two different monsters here. And while he fought to improve the sequences, in some ways he did kind of add objective flaw to it. So it's kind of like Jar Jar, best intentions and all, but you end up messing it up a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I know that's the heated topic with is the special editions, you know, the updates where, you know, George is like, I can finally clean up some of the stuff. I can finally add this. I can finally, you know, take some scenes and combine it a little bit with the PT, like with the celebrations at the end of Return of the Jedi and what have you, seen Coruscant and all that other stuff and Naboo and all that other stuff. You know, but, you know, everybody has their, you know, their opinion about that. And that's what's great because George created such an epic story, and going back and as an artist and saying, I'm going to pick, you know, do some touch-ups like a painter. I'm going to use it as a painter. I'm like, I'm looking at my paint. I'm like, I can add a little bit here and a little bit there. Is it going to change the product a little bit? Maybe, but is it going to change the story? Not really, but still people who are a fan of your art is going to be criticizing more and more because either they got attached to it or maybe they liked it, you know, so you're going to have that broad range of criticism going on in that. So, and that's what fans do. You know, we are fanatics. We get attached to stuff. We love stuff. You know, we're
passionate.
Exactly. And, you know, we even don't like some things in there. That's okay. That's okay. So let's go ahead and start moving on. So going back to the PT, what did you think of the Chosen One arc? And did you think it gave more meaning to Luke's arc in Return of the Jedi?
And actually, yes, because the Chosen One, this is it's a trope a lot, or it's, oh my God, during the 90s, there was just so many Chosen Ones. I mean, Liu Kang was the Chosen One in Mortal Kombat. Now you got freaking other Chosen Ones here and there. And then you have Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One. And it's like, that is a trope that is sorely being overused, but there is a lot of thought that actually went into it in this. He is going to bring balance to the Force. Well, what does that mean? A lot of people don't even know what that means in the product. It's like a prophecy that misread could have been. We don't even know what it means to bring balance to the Force. Yeah. You also have all the speculations of, well, 2 Sith, 2 Jedi. Force is in balance, people. No, that's not exactly what it means. The Force being in balance is the Force in harmony. Now, what that means with Luke is that as heartbreaking as that scene was with Obi-Wan, where he is completely just screaming at Anakin, it says you were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. Well, let's break even all of that down. Believe it or not, what a lot of people don't realize is Obi-Wan, when Darth Maul killed Qui-Gon, he was attacking Darth Maul in anger. He was drawing, in no uncertain terms, on the dark side a little bit to go after the one who killed him. Well, let's look at everybody who's defeated a Sith in the movies. Darth Maul, killed by Obi-Wan. After Obi-Wan drew on his anger a little bit and forced Maul back a little bit, actually gained the upper hand too. We got Count Dooku, who died once Anakin started tapping into the dark side. We got Luke, who managed to defeat his father in lightsaber combat when he started tapping into his anger. Well, when it comes to Anakin's turn to the dark side and him turning to the light side in order to destroy Palpatine, this is actually a pretty interesting balance. You have these characters who are giving into their anger to defeat a darkness, yet in this last case, to fully destroy the Sith, you have a Sith that has turned his back on the Sith and now has only one Sith left to destroy him. So in a way, yes, Luke is an embodiment of hope that at one point is corrupted by his hatred and his desperation, because yes, he attacked his father in anger, but another thing he did was show his desperation to make sure that his sister was not turned.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people actually overlook that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And a part of that you can even argue with Luke when Vader, influences him to go into his aggression basically on protecting his sister, that he went in to protect his sister as a form of protector and stuff like that. So you can argue like part of that is not fully going into the dark because he's choosing to protect his sister from the dark, but there is a form of aggression too, which aggression can lead to the dark side. So it's all how you channel yourself, channel the light side, and how you counter attack to protect. And so that's one thing that if you really pay attention with Star Wars, including Luke and his mistakes and how he teaches his new Jedi Order, he always says, clear your mind, focus yourself in through the Force and let it guide you, blah, 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 which you kind of see it with the PT, but more so with Luke because he has the experience. He teetered on that side, not only with protecting his sister, with what Vader said to him in Return of the Jedi, but also with sneaking in and thinking he's going to defeat the clone emperor in Dark Empire, and dealing with all that. So he has a lot of that experience, which you see the PT Jedi, they don't, because Yoda was training them to defeat the Sith of the old while the Sith were in atoning and studying the Jedi in privacy and secrecy to learn how to get their revenge. Well, Yoda said, I have made mistakes. I failed to evolve the Jedi, and the evolution will occur with Luke Skywalker and his sister, which we see later on. So, yeah. And so that's all in the Revenge of the Sith novel right there.
And that's a wonderful thing because he's talking with Qui-Gon at the time. He's saying, failed I did because failed to grow I did.
Right.
I've been as you said, I've been teaching them to fight an old enemy that no longer existed. The Sith have changed. And one of that also leads to the EU where Darth Bane exists. Now, when you read the novel or the prequel novels, like this one here, the whole prequel trilogy, there are inconsistencies to the greater story because they mention Darth Bane and they mention that the Sith are only 2,000 years old. And it's like, well, we know a little bit different now, don't we? But it still is at the core that that Darth Bane was the one that suddenly disappeared. And yet Darth Bane was also the one that disappeared, but yet kept the Sith hidden, but also hidden in plain view. He made the entire galaxy think that the Jedi had won. Where he's like, I want them to think that. I want them to think that we are defeated, that we are destroyed. And that way we can grow inside of the Republic, do what we need to do. And yes, one of the beautiful things about Darth Bane is he understood this is not going to happen in my lifetime. So I am going to lay a foundation that will take however long it takes for a grand plan to destroy the Jedi and have our ultimate victory. Unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition in his own Sith line because Palpatine as much as everybody said, or as much as he originally was of the rule of two line, he abandoned the rule of two after he killed Plagueis. In fact, actually, it was before he killed Plagueis he even abandoned it, because he allowed Darth Maul to carry the Darth title. He already violated the rule of two. Now, Plagueis left him, or let him do this, obviously, because he thought that he didn't grant him the title. But it's like, he's already planning on moving beyond you. And that's one of the things I liked about the Darth Plagueis novel was you see the moment that Sidious decided that he is going to eventually kill his master. It wasn't just an act out of pure impulse. No, when his master force chokes him, caught him off guard, that set the stage for Plagueis to inevitably be killed by Palpatine. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, I will never, ever be caught off guard again. And going into the EU, I absolutely love the Sith arcs because it gives you that sort of semblance of that we know the Jedi. They're extremely dogmatic. I mean, that is exactly how Palpatine references them. It's like, if one is to understand the great mystery, one must view all of its aspects, not the dogmatic, narrow view of the Jedi. So yes, that is what a lot of people who are fans of Star Wars, they're drawn to the Sith, because it's like the Sith aren't afraid to feel. They're not afraid to do what is necessary. In fact, that's actually one of the nice lines in the Dark Lord book of Rise of Darth Vader. The only thing, or do not be afraid to take what you want at the expense of those around you.
Right.
It's one of his key lessons to Vader. It's the only thing that's stopping you is you. Do you want, or if you want to take something, take it. You don't have to care. That was also one of the great parts of the seduction in the book of episode 3. Everybody sees the scene in episode 3 of the movie where Anakin turns on him and is like, I'm going to report you to the Jedi Council. What you don't see, which is in the book, was he was a literal emotional wreck. He wasn't sleeping. He was plagued by visions. That was actually something that was Anakin's greatest ability. Visions was his specialty of a sense, except that he saw it more of a curse. And at this time, he was just afraid of losing Padme to the point where he was literally listening to Palpatine, and Palpatine was just pouring that poison in until he said one word, become my apprentice. Well, I wouldn't know how to do. And then he realized, oh crap, he doesn't even, he acted on such impulse and instinct. He didn't even realize he had pulled out his lightsaber and had it pointed straight at Palpatine.
Yeah.
That is the way that they show it in the movie is actually far inferior to the way they have it in the book. That is why I love the book. The book
itself is basically the best movie and EU book, I would say, of all time inside there. It covers a lot that even has some of the deleted scenes that George didn't use in there. And so I highly recommend Revenge of the Sith novelization. I do have a podcast interview with Orange, with Open Airlock Policy, and I think we're going to do a part 2 sometimes in the future, because there's a lot of things we couldn't cover in the time frame that he has pinned for those podcasts. So stay tuned for that. So I mean, there's a depth in there. And yes, Anakin or Hayden Christensen did do well by Anakin. However, some of the scenes that you have inside the novelization just put more depth into those scenes and stuff. So it really is wonderful to have and read. And so let's move on from there. So what got you interested in the expanded universe?
The games, when I was younger, to be completely honest, the very first game that I played that was Star Wars related was the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter on the computer. And
Nice.
oh my gosh, the Z-95 headhunters, the different Imperial ships as well. It was just so cool to see where you can have a joystick and fly it like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to, or this flows into Star Wars because before Disney got a hold of Star Wars, I was younger back then. We went to Epcot Center, and at one of the areas they had the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter game.
Mm-hmm.
And my brothers also loved playing those games too. I mean, we were basically fighting each other for who gets to play it first at home and whatnot.
Yeah.
And my brother had drawn such a crowd, teaching everybody different things of what to do, how to play. My dad's like, "Go up and get your brother. It's time to go because their park's about to close in 20 minutes."
Yeah.
And I go up and I'm like, "Excuse me, guy, Matt, it's time to go." "Shut up. I'm playing a game." Dad said it's time to go." "Shut up. I'm playing a game."
Yeah.
And then there was the N64 games, Rogue Squadron, Shadows of the Empire. Love that game, especially if you could do the Master Chief. It's even greater.
Yeah.
And there was just so many great games that came up during the 90s and early 2000s. The absolute best game that got me fully curious into the EU and the greater storylines was Jedi Academy, or Jedi Knight Jedi Academy,
Mm-hmm.
where you follow Jaden Core. And I'm like, who are these characters that they're talking about? Where's Luke? Why can't I play as Luke? I want to play as Luke.
Yeah.
And then you see these different characters. I'm like, well, now I want to learn about these characters. And then you learn about Marco Ragnos, and then it was like a pebble that launches an avalanche.
Mm-hmm.
I was hooked,
Yeah.
purely hooked into
Mm-hmm.
the expanded universe from then on out.
Yeah. So with that, what was your favorite book that you read then? What
My
was your
favorite,
your very first book?
my very first book was Truce of Bakura because my
Okay.
brother wanted me to read it in chronological order because my brother actually has all of the books. He got them all over the years, except
Yeah.
for the Fate of the Jedi series. He hadn't quite gotten that far. But he's like, read this, and he handed me all the books and I was reading them all. And I'm like, God, Truce of Bakura was it's a slow burn in the beginning. It doesn't really take off until the latter half. But one of the things I did like was Anakin visiting Leia, where
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I don't have a lot of time here, but I do need you to do something for me, please. Tell or give
Right.
Luke this message. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what does that mean? He doesn't have a lot of time. He's the chosen one. He's supposed to be all powerful. Well, you do have to learn how to become one with the Force. That's not automatically gifted to you,
Yeah.
So that is why he was not able to retain his full presence in the Force. And even later on, during the Thrawn trilogy, the original and best Thrawn trilogy, Obi-Wan's time comes up and he is unable to maintain. Now, when it comes to my favorite novel, period, let's see here. Dark Rendezvous.
Okay.
Because I love Yoda that much. But also, well, go ahead, ask your question.
No, I was going to say, okay, and I was going to add on to that. So, what is your favorite moment in Dark Rendezvous? There is a Epic Legends collection now, recover and reprint of the book.
Oh,
and
my fury at that.
Yeah, and they took out the acknowledgement. So, like, a lot of authors put in an acknowledgement towards LucasArts, Lucasfilms, Super Stoney, Leland Sheehan, including George Lucas and stuff. And so there's reprints, they take out the acknowledgments, which basically is erasing, history of, how that book was formed and stuff because of the narrative that's been going on. But what is your favorite scene in Dark Rendezvous?
There's actually two of them, which are my absolute favorites. One is where the Jedi, or a Jedi who is actually mentioned in episode 3's novel, his name is Wee, or Whie.
Yeah.
He's actually more prevalent in the Dark Rendezvous novel. And also another Jedi who ends up going to the agricultural corps because she's not as strong in the Force to really maintain Jedi training. To Elizabeth Scout Esterhazy. I love that name, Esterhazy. Yeah. But Wee has lost his master. His master had died. And this kid just rips into Yoda. They're all on a mission together. And Yoda allows him to vent to him. But when this kid disrespectfully turns his back on Yoda, Yoda just twitches his fingers, turning Wee around. And he's like, do you think I haven't been where you are? Do you think I haven't lost, or I'm 900 or I'm 800 some odd years old? Do you not think that I have loved more, cared more, lost more? This wisdom does not come without the experience that I've learned, or the losses and the tragedies of our life. He basically shames this kid in no uncertain terms, but you want to teach, and he's like, you think you could teach me about grief? It's like, no. And my absolute favorite is where Dooku wants him to turn to the dark side. And he is just toying with Dooku. He's like, or the dark side, or he's like, what can the dark side give me? The dark side can give you power, can give you anything. What about a rose? Can the dark side give me a rose? What? And he staggers Dooku. But then he actually turns to the dark side. Yoda turns to the dark side to prove a point, folks. It's like that line, disappointment, I do not like my apprentice. Give me my rose. And Dooku realizes in that moment what a monumental mistake he made. A lot of people think that Dooku is such a badass, but Dooku was always a jealous type. And when but he was also a fearful type too, because he realized if Yoda was to actually fully give into the dark side, Sidious would be annihilated. That's a direct quote from the novel, folks. He could turn a planet like Kashyyyk into Dagobah if he turned to the dark side. That's the kind of power that Yoda could wield if he ever went fully dark. And that is one of the best things that I really loved, because he is such an embodiment of the light side and in control, because he knows what going to the dark side can do. He knows that his own apprentice, Dooku, was going to fall, because he said, when you fall, I will be there to catch you. And Dooku even realized, he's like, son of a bitch, you knew I was going to go to the dark side. And those moments are just they're key moments. And Dooku, a lot of people don't understand this, but Dooku was also jealous of Anakin Skywalker. And it's also explained in Dark Rendezvous. He's like, your new favorite. And he's like, I didn't invite him here.
Yeah.
Because Obi-Wan and Anakin end up showing up, and it's like, invite them? I did not. He was pissed off that those two showed up. It's like, I did not invite those two.
Yeah. So that's a great novel too as well. And I highly recommend, if you have not had a chance to read it, just get it in there, especially when we see a lot more of Yoda coming into the new lore. Go and dive into the original lore of these characters as well. And then you could maybe make a clear choice for yourself on where you rather stay within the timelines that are being created, you know, the original or the Disney or whatever. But I'm not here to praise Disney or anything like that.
No.
So, favorite EU or era in the EU and why? So, what is your favorite era? So, we have like the Old Republic, we have the PT, which still is part of the Old Republic, but that just, you know, basically gives us the movie era that goes into the Clone Wars. And then you have the Dark Times, and then you have, which is also, it includes the New Rebellion, or the Rebel Alliance, the Rebellion. Then you have the OT, which you could say is part of the Dark Times, the ending of the Dark Times. And then you have, of course, the New Republic era, the New Jedi Order era, and then you have the Legacy era. So what is your favorite timeline? I know it's kind of hard to decide because there's amazing stories in each and every one of them.
Actually, it's not that hard to decide at all. It's just a matter of breaking it down into different categories. When it comes to books, I absolutely love Legacy or New Jedi Order and Legacy.
Okay.
Because it expands into the Skywalker line, the Yuzong Fong War, greater stakes because, well, after Chewbacca dies in one of the most epic fashions ever, it's like, oh shit, nobody's safe.
Yeah.
And then, or when it comes, that's novels. When it comes to pre-novels and whatnot, well, this character here, Valkorion, who is the last avatar of the immortal Emperor Vitiate, in my opinion, the strongest Sith out there, stronger than Sidious, because, well, Sidious is a bitch.
We'll have to elaborate on that. So just you keep going and I'll go back.
The Star Wars the Old Republic game era is my favorite when it comes to, because it was literally armies of Jedi versus armies of Sith. And Soul Assassin, if I was a moderator, I'd time you off for 5 minutes for that blasphemy.
He is my moderator.
I know. He's mine as well. He's a great moderator.
Yes,
but
we have this going back and forth with each other, so it's like a friendly fire kind of deal.
Oh yeah. I know. And when it comes to when it comes to video games and whatnot, Old Republic is the way to go for me. When it comes to novels, it is strictly the NJO and the Legacy of the Force, because those stories, especially Karen Travis's novels, because I am a huge Karen Travis Star Wars fan. Everybody knows Tolkien, Lord of the Rings and whatnot, and what he did with Lord of the Rings. Well, Karen Travis literally did a smaller scale of that with the Mandalorians. She created a history, a language, and for all those SJWs out there, it was a non-binary language.
Right.
It was a genderless language. What the word for grandfather or father was the same word for mother. This word for brother was the same word for sister, and all of that. And she created such a background for the clones, the Mandalorians, that it even bled into the Star Wars games of the Old Republic. Knights of the Old Republic. They had her Mandalorian language being spoken in Star Wars the Old Republic. They had all that brought into it, the tenets, the honor that these Mandalorians have. And one of the greatest things is, it's like they're like Mercury. You can't kill them all because they're not all there. They only come together when the Mandalore calls. And when the Mandalore calls, that there's only one reason why he would, and that's if shit is going down. And if shit is going down, stay out of their way, because these are guys that went up against the strongest Sith Lord at the time during Legacy of the Force. These are, or even people like not Boba Fett, but other Mandalorians were going up against Cadus, and Cadus is trying to escape, and he tries using a nice little trick that he has that he used to kill Mara Jade, projecting the face of somebody they would know over his own. And I absolutely love what one of those I can't remember which one it was that said it to him, but it's like, yeah, that face doesn't suit you. And then he puts a freaking blade right through Cadus's ankle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, face doesn't suit you, dude. Slick right through the ankle. I'm like, that's badass. You also have Boba Fett, who, out of the non-force sensitive characters, he is my ultimate favorite character. A character who is also insanely, stupidly rich, because he's literally a trillionaire in these books. But his character also said to Han Solo in New Jedi Order, my beef was never with you. My beef was with the Jedi. But sadly, in the New Jedi Order, Jason Solo was kind of stupid and made him actually want to hate the Solos. And everybody thinks that that Sidious had the perfect revenge against the Jedi. No. Boba Fett honestly had the perfect revenge against the Jedi, especially against the golden family of the Jedi, the Skywalker clan, and the Solos and whatnot, because their own family came begging him for help to learn how to defeat a Jedi or a Sith. And Boba Fett, a lot of people don't realize this, has a collection of lightsabers. He is kind of like a successful version of General Grievous, just not cybernetic. I'm talking EU General Grievous, folks, not that Filoni taint thing that they did in the Clone Wars show.
Yeah, we won't go there.
Yeah, we won't. General Grievous was feared. He had a belt of lightsabers. He slaughtered Jedi. He didn't run away from them. And one of the best lines is in Revelation, which I believe is, right here. I got them all. All right, got all my books out, folks. Revelation, where he is like, tells Jaina, give me your lightsaber. Why? Because I left mine at home. Give it over. And he then slices a twig off of, or a sapling, and he's like, a weapon for a civilized age, you say? You slice off somebody's head and you give them enough oxygenated blood in their brain for maybe 7 to 8 minutes of life, and they are still feeling all of that pain. And you see this happen before you and see how well you sleep some nights. When he's saying that to Jaina, he is delving into that darkest memory of his life, where he saw a Jedi kill his father. And one of the things I absolutely love about Boba Fett is he never got into the Mandalorian lifestyle. He couldn't care less until Braylor, his second in command, told him, it's like, we need you. And yeah, your father, or you may be a piece of shit, but we need you as our Mandalore. And when it comes to that kind of commitment, he's like, fuck it, I'll do it. And he does do it. He doesn't fully jump into the Mandalorian lifestyle because he doesn't know how to. He was learning how to. His father was teaching him.
Yeah, and then it was Finn Shisa too that he also promised he would take up the Mandalore.
He did make that promise.
Yeah, he made that promise to him, but also Django was prepping him to fall in his footsteps as Mandalore as well. So, but we never got to that. He was learning how to be less fearful. Like when he received, went and got the tooth from that creature, that beast. I forgot his name again, the Gayrog or whatever it's called. And then he was prepping him for a profession of being a bounty hunter, how to make a profession, because as a Mandalorian, you're not just a Mandalorian, right? You have a profession, you're a mercenary, whatever you decide to delve into. And then he was also prepping him to basically lead the Mandalorians as well and take his place. And people don't realize that, because we didn't get that far in his upbringing with Django because of what happened at Geonosis.
Yep.
So,
And another thing that I really like about the Mandalorians is that they're literally a mixture of two earthly, or a lot of people, yes, you get inspiration from real life for certain things in Star Wars. That's never, ever been in debate. Karen Travis actually did that too. Well, the Mandalorians are a mixture of Spartan lifestyle as well as Irish lifestyle. Spartan in that they are the elite of the elite. You don't screw with them because, well, they can easily make even Sith and Jedi run. They did, in fact. I mean, even Sith Lords respected Boba Fett. Darth Vader being the one that did. And when it comes to the Irish, they're farmers, but they also know how to fight. And they also, or believe it or not, a lot of Irish, when it came to military service, ended up becoming mercenaries when they had to get out of the military. So mercenaries are bounty hunters, so to speak. They're in it for money. So yeah, they're also extreme, or when it comes to Irish, they're also extremely family oriented. So when you really break that down and how Karen Travis made family an important tenet of the Mandalorians, it's like, this is why I like her work, because you make bloodline, or there's a Mandalorian proverb. I can't remember how to say it in the language, but I do know how to say it, or I do know its translation. Family is more than bloodline, because one of the things that the Mandalorians like to do is adopt. They adopt not just people, but other cultures. The Mandalorians are no longer a species at this point of
they're a mixture of the Tong basically, became extinct, and whoever was left over from that, basically turned into a culture, a way of life, and building through, adoption. And that doesn't just mean humans, like you said, it means other species and stuff like that. And it's a non-binary because they have so much different type of species and stuff like that. The language is non-binary. We see, gay marriages and all that other stuff. And so
Braylor, I believe Braylor is gay, I believe.
And then we have Bevine and his husband as well.
Or Bevine, not Braylor, but Bevine.
And so beautiful thing. So going back to Boba Fett, he also had told Han Solo, it wasn't always about you, when like these contracts and me going after, is about making money. So basically, so he was like, no offense, but it's not all about you. It's just about making money, kind of deal. And so I love his back and forth over the timeline, over the years with Solo and stuff like that. But one thing that really relished on in a revenge part is after, Jason or Darth Caedus basically killed his daughter. He's like, he got his revenge. He was like, I don't have to do anything. The family is deconstructing themselves from within. That's the greatest revenge I can have. So, and they're like, what? Jaina's like, what? Kind of deal. He goes, so whether if you kill your brother or not, I'm gonna win. Yeah, I'm gonna get my way. I'm gonna get my way. So we're gonna go ahead and move on here. I'm gonna go into a quiz question here because I haven't been able to. I didn't forget about it. We just got into some great conversations. Okay, who was Tenebrae born to?
Lord Dramoth.
There you go. Yeah, I figured you would have that, but yeah. So first quiz question there. So let's go ahead and go on. What did you think of the Old Republic? Now we're going way back in history versus the Skywalker timeline. So between those two timelines, because we have, we do have like some prophecies that people seen about how, the Skywalkers are going to rise, even though, we didn't really know exactly. So despite that, it's still the same timeline, many centuries, years back. What do you think about the Old Republic versus the Skywalker timeline, because we have a lot of history being made. So if the Skywalker timeline, and I'm just saying quote unquote Skywalker timeline, so that we can know why we have the Sith, why we have the Jedi, what's going on, why did we get up to this point. So what do you think between the two?
The expanded universe of of the Old Republic really shows that even though the twilight of the Old Republic for movies was the Golden Age, the Golden Age actually was more thousands of years ago.
Right.
Where the corruption hadn't fully set in, or it was a lot less corrupt rather. However, the Sith or the galaxy was still divided into two. The Sith and Tenebrae, or at the point in time he was going by Darth Vitiate, he had taken a back seat. He had actually removed himself from the galaxy in order to build up his army, to build up his empire. Droman Kos was not a planet that was known to any star map at the time. Korriban was known to be the birthplace of the Sith, but also there were other planets like the planet Anathema, which was actually went by a different name when Tenebrae was born to it. He actually had it changed to Anathema. Now, when he came in, this is a Sith Lord who allowed other Sith Lords to thrive, but he also cast his own empire aside when he realized it was a failure. It's like, I've made some serious mistakes here, but that's okay because I have another plan, or I already have another empire in the works. And that's the brilliant thing. With Tenebrae is that he's immortal because he uses, they call it the Emperor's Ritual because they they never really came up with a specific thing, but a derivative of that ritual is the Thought Bomb.
Right.
Which Darth Bane used in order to destroy the other Sith. But when this ritual is used to its truest purpose, he doesn't just wipe out life or around him. He wipes out the planet's life. And then he infuses it into himself, which fuels his body with pure life at its core.
Yeah.
And that's why he's able to live so long. And not only that, this is a person who can possess you from across the galaxy. And not just you, but your friends, your family, and all that stuff. He was that powerful. When I say that Sidious was a little bitch, that little one-off little line earlier, Sidious can't do that. Sidious can create force storms. He can unleash the force storm that he did in the comics and in the novels. He can cast even the strongest force lightning. He can do essence transfer, which was one of his biggest goals. What a lot of people don't realize from the movies is Sidious had a plan that he was going to live and rule a 10,000 year empire. Unfortunately, the movies didn't cover that, you see. When he's declaring his empire, he says this empire will stand for 10,000 years with one ruler. His goal was immortality. A goal that if he was smart enough to allow Plagueis to continue his experiments, he would have achieved it. But he didn't. So he had to rely on essence transfer into imperfect clones in order to maintain his own life. But Vitiate didn't require essence transfer. I mean, yes, it was a small tool to him so that he could jump into the body of Valkorion later on, but he was jumping between bodies. He didn't destroy the body because that's what essence transfer does. It destroys your physical self to allow your incorporeal self to take another form. And you better do it within mindless body, because if your target has any or has a strong enough will, well, you will be forever cast into what they call oblivion, I believe it is, where it's not dead, but it's not alive either.
Yeah.
That was Darth Bane's fate when he tried using essence transfer against Zana. But yes, when it comes to that time period of the Old Republic, I like it because it shows Star Wars, big wars going on back and forth, but it also shows the masterful manipulations of several different things on several different levels. Palpatine
Correct.
did it at a smaller scale in order to, or when you're manipulating events, you want to ensure that even your unfavorable results favor you, which is perfectly what Palpatine did. Well, Vitiate was doing this to the point that makes Palpatine's accomplishments look petty at best. He had a whole nother empire lined up and ready to go, and when that was his Eternal Empire, they came in and in less than a year took down both the Sith Empire and the Republic. It's like, and all he had to do was just hop over into that one body and start at it again. However, he had his kids who were insanely powerful in the Force, and the only problem was that he didn't love them. I mean, that's the only real critique. It's like, you guys are pissed off at your daddy because you got daddy issues. You kids are insane because you got daddy issues.
Yeah, and I like to add on too, is like, what Soul Assassin said, there's a lot of like Sith history and lore.
Yes.
And so when we get to Plagueis and stuff, he's trying to figure it out, trying to like, okay, he wants what used to be, and that is immortality and stuff. And that's what we see. And that's why we see Palpatine not as skilled, not as knowledgeable because of all that. So even though the Sith, like I said, a lot of has been lost and stuff. So even though the Sith still evolved and what have you and studied the Jedi to get their ultimate revenge, they still lost a lot of significant abilities for that. And I think that's good because in a sense, I'm talking lore wise, because we need to know why Palpatine is looking for immortality, why it was lost, because
which is explained.
Yeah, exactly. It's all explained. It's all there. But I'm just saying, it's like beautiful how the evolution of the Sith happened. Stuff does get lost, including with the Jedi. The Jedi knew a long time ago about becoming Force ghosts. That was one thing that was lost that then Qui-Gon started bringing back. And so we have that again. So we see the evolution of these two Force, basically, societies, the loss of some abilities and the gaining of others and stuff like that. That's really, really interesting. If people just sit down and get into the lore, they will discover a whole new other realm of world and of history between not only the Force users, but in general the galaxy in itself. So yeah, and it's a very beautiful thing. So with the Skywalker, like timeline, quote unquote timeline, we see the Force, I wouldn't say the Force being reinvented, but these two type of societies coming into another era, maybe not as powerful, but the Force didn't want them to be powerful. We've seen Plagueis get cut off from the Force at one point because of his meddling. Even though he was able to make himself stronger later, he was meddling in it, which the Force is like, I don't think so. And so Anakin was created.
Activate contingency 1 for bringing balance to the Force. Okay, who do I pick? You, slave lady.
Yeah,
you're my vessel.
The one that's not really suspected because she's like out of the galaxy's eyes, basically, and that was confirmed because even Qui-Gon's like, we really don't come out to the outer rim to discover Force
If
sensitive.
he had been born in the Republic, we would have identified him early.
Exactly, and so that's the beautiful thing is we have these, I would say, explanations are these development of lore to why and all this other stuff. So now we're going to go ahead and move on. What is your favorite Star Wars species and why? Who are?
Species?
That might be hard.
That
Yes.
is indeed hard because a person who likes delving so deep in, you actually see a lot of different advantages of different species. I mean, Zabrix, I absolutely love Zabrix because they have such a high pain threshold. You got Togruta, like Shakti, who have a natural vibrate or aura and vibrational sense. You got Miralukas, who can
I must say,
literally
what
see
you gonna
alignments.
say? Ahsoka Tano? You know.
Who is
I'm so
Ahsoka?
Ahsoka. Who is that? So go on. I just had a tease. Go ahead.
I'll answer that in a second, Soul Assassin. My favorite species is known as an unknown species because the maker didn't want their species known. It's Yoda's species, folks.
Of course.
Of course, or some people would also probably say Zeltrons because, well, they're such a hedonistic species.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally asked that on my Valkorian Twitter account. What are your thoughts on Zeltrons? It's like, those are you talking about the sex fiends in Star Wars?
Yeah.
They're I think that they are indeed one of the more interesting and one of the more adult themed aspects of Star Wars. But honestly, my favorite is Yoda's species, not so much because of there's such a strong connection to the Force, but it's mostly because of they're so mysterious, and I love the mystery. And I absolutely agree with George Lucas that there has to be some mystery to Star Wars. You can't explain everything because because then there's no.
You make the galaxy smaller.
Yeah, you have this big galaxy, but once you know everything, it's basically you just get to put it on the shelf and forget about it. It's like with some mystery being out there, you allow yourself to still be able to wonder. Now, don't question my interest in Zeltron. Answer Soul Assassin's question on Revan. Many people say he's the Skywalker of the Old Republic. In some ways, he is. In some ways, he isn't. He's not a Skywalker, obviously. But Revan is a balance point where there is a novel in the NJO that's called Balance Point. Revan literally was a balance point of the Force. He's a Vergence like Anakin because he literally is a person who fell to the dark side, was even twisted by the Emperor's power, but he also redeemed himself, and in so doing allowed himself to balance between both light and dark. He allowed and a lot of people do not like the way that Revan was done in the game, The Old Republic, where he's split between light and dark, where his body is dark and his spirit is light. Well, that only attests to how strong he is. And one of the things I absolutely love about Revan is that this is a man who knew of the danger of the Emperor, went out there fully intending to kill this guy, and even though he couldn't, he still managed to influence the Emperor. That's how powerful he is. Because while he was in his incarceration, he was slowly feeding the Emperor with insecurity. It's not time to invade yet. It's not your time to invade the Republic yet. He was buying the Republic time to strengthen itself. To be somebody who is that powerful, to actually give somebody as strong as Vitiate that amount of doubt and insecurity, that's nothing to shake a finger at.
Yeah. So going on with that, so what is your favorite planet in Star Wars? And hello, Matt Wilkins, how are you doing? So what is your favorite? Do you have a favorite planet or maybe system in Star Wars, and why?
Favorite system or
planet?
Or planet.
Usually they have, sometimes they don't. So
Honestly, the more interesting one is a planet that actually was. Let's see here. There's just way too many that are interesting for different reasons. But honestly, I'd say a planet that doesn't exist anymore that was kind of blown away. Alderaan.
oh, okay, and why?
Because in or it was a planet that had not so much an oligarchy, but what's an aristocracy kind of government where it's the heads of family or several rich families throughout centuries and yet they managed a peaceful presence in times of war. But however, that also was their downfall too, because when a planet does become complacent, they tend to be easier to take over. But Alderaan was to the galaxy in a way what Luke Skywalker became, a beacon of hope, a beacon of peace that was the overall goal of the Republic, to be fully peaceful and integrated. And yet, unfortunately, because of its complacency, Alderaan is peaceful. We have no weapons and whatnot. And it's like, and that is why you are easily taken over. But how even during the time of the Dark Times, when they started the Dark Times in Rise of Dark Lord, Rise of Darth Vader, when Vader's like, why do you allow these protests?
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be better that they happen here instead of happen at the Capitol, don't you think? And Vader, he basically gets his own ego checked by Bail Organa, who is the shining star of the Alderanian people at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like he literally puts Darth Vader in his place in a way, because he's like, or that's the old way. You would be wise to ascribe to the new way, Senator. Well, I still believe in freedom for people.
Mm-hmm.
And while I am senator for this planet, people can be able to make their voices heard.
Right.
It's literally a beacon of freedom for the
Mm-hmm.
galaxy, which is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Won't accept
Right.
my suggestion of
Painting Alderaan behind Leia, the exploding Alderaan
Oh,
behind.
yeah, the exploding Alderaan.
Yeah.
Well, that's just twist, or maybe in a alternate universe, OG would do that, but not this one. This is Jedi OG.
And then, so I'm going to another quiz here. What planet did Volcarion declare immortal emperor of the new eternal empire? So
Valkorion declared Zakul.
So cool. And I think I'm going to expand a little bit more of that on my community page, because I don't think hardly anybody, well, if you have played the games and stuff, you might know, but this planet might not be a well-known planet to a lot of fans. So I'll go ahead and talk more about Zokul on my community page. So moving on, favorite starfighter and why? So there's many starfighters. What is your favorite starfighters?
My favorite starfighter class would most likely be A-Wing, because I'm a sucker for speed.
Okay.
Not to mention they also had, or the A-Wings, their blaster cannons had a bit of a swivel on them.
Yeah.
Which made it easy, or which X-Wings don't have. I mean, X-Wings are basically when it comes to the starfighters of the Rebel Alliance, you have the X-Wing, which is a perfect balance. Y-Wing, which is power, shield, everything. And then you have the A-Wing, which is strafing and speed and agility. And your firepower may not be at at its strongest, but good luck catching the little shits. Where you got your Y-wings, which are essentially heavy bomber, heavy shields and whatnot, and then you have the X-wing in the middle. I really like the A-wings because I've always been a person to really lay down or when I drive, I'm I'm a Leadfoot Louie. I tend to go fast.
Okay, so you like the speed.
Yeah.
All right, so who is your favorite non-force pilot and why?
Non-force
sensitive.
or non-force sensitive pilot.
Yeah.
Ooh, you really asked the best questions. Han Solo.
Okay, and go ahead and elaborate on that.
He pilots a ship that is ready to blow up at any second. I mean, come on now. You got to be nuts to pilot a ship like that. But
despite the Falcon being very modified and uniquely modified by him,
yeah.
which Lando never agreed on. They have their back and forth. It's a beautiful relationship between the two. But despite that, elaborate more on why you think he's like the best non-force user pilot.
Because he's also willing to do things that most people would call insane. I mean, he has done things with his ship that everybody's like, how are you still alive? Because his daring, not to mention the fact that he's also Corellian. You just don't screw with Corellians. You don't tell them the odds. You don't screw with them. They'll send you to hell. And yes, hell does exist in Star Wars, folks. It's called a Corellian hell. But yeah, it's his insanity when it comes to his piloting. And not to mention, he went straight up to a freaking Super Star Destroyer with his Millennium Falcon and told the person or the warlord on that ship, kiss my Wookiee before blasting it to oblivion. I mean, anybody who does that with any sort or with a ship, especially a ship that's fallen apart, commands eternal respect for me. I mean, that's why he is that rogue pilot that just really gives. He's an embodiment of F around and find out.
Exactly. Yeah, and so moving on here. So, who is your favorite Old Republic Jedi and also Sith?
Well, Sith obviously is Valkorian.
Yeah, we already established that.
Yeah, Jedi wise, that's a good question. Satele Shan, actually.
Okay, elaborate a little on that.
She is a descendant of Revan. She also is a Jedi that essentially learned the same lesson that Yoda learned after this cool empire invaded. You have to tap into a way or learn to connect with the Force in a way that the Jedi teachings don't teach you in order to battle this new enemy. And she also managed to befriend a Sith who also became one with the Force, which is insane, which I also covered on my Valkorian page on Twitter. His name was Darth Mar. He was also he's my second favorite Sith of the Old Republic, because honestly, this is a dude that just is as mysterious as the mask he wears. But Satele Shan is a combination of the best parts of Revan and Bastila. Essentially, yes, actually, because not only that, she had such a connection to the Force where she understood what she needed to do, but also she wasn't perfect. She wasn't a perfect Jedi. She gave into her passions. She didn't turn to the dark side, but she gave into her passions and ended up spitting out a kid, Theron Shan. But when she went up against Malgus in the cinematic for Alderaan, or the Alderaan cinematic, where it's her versus Darth Malgus, she's using a technique that is actually known in the movies called Two Dominus, where she absorbed not Force energy, but a lightsaber blade, where she catches it and is absorbing all that energy and manages to basically shove Malgus into a rock face and then blow up the rock face around him. Her power is essentially one of the draws that I have because she's able to, or she wanted to learn different methods, but she also wanted to learn them for the right reasons. She didn't seek power, but she was willing to, or she sought knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And her skills with lightsaber were no mean feat either.
Yeah. All right. And then who's your favorite smuggler and why?
Favorite smuggler?
There's a lot to choose from.
Yes, there are. Let's see here. Could go at Rand, but he wasn't really a smuggler. Damn, I'm blanking on him right now. It's like obviously there's Han Solo, but it's like, frick, what other smugglers are there? I can't think. Give me a few other.
Okay, so we have, of course.
Oh my God,
Card.
no, yeah, talent card.
We have Booster Terek.
Mm-hmm.
We have his daughter Mirta, or not Mirta. What's her name? Mirax, yeah. And who else is there?
Oh my God, which one was it that had a frickin' or that turned a damn Super Star Destroyer into a casino?
That is Booster Terek.
Yeah.
That he had it painted red.
Yep.
Yep. He's the only one out of like a civilian in the galaxy to possess.
Yeah, a Super Star Destroyer. Mm-hmm. It's like, and he turns it into a casino.
He turns it basically into a living like hotel complex casino smuggling where you can go in and get various goods and stuff like that. He harbors people. He harbors a Jedi at one point, like in the New Jedi Order and all this other stuff. So yeah.
Booster Terek would probably be the choice that I because he's in it to make money, but he also does have a conscience. He's not one to just say, all right, I'll roll, or whoever gives me the most money. It's like, no, this has to align with my Galt Renault. Oh my God, yes, dude. Galt Renault is also another good smuggler. He's from or for those of you who don't know, he's from Nico Okar, who becomes Galt Renault. Yeah. He's a Deveronian, the devil people. He is such a hilarious character in the game.
Yeah.
He will swindle you, he will woo you, and he'll also rob you blind. I mean, this dude got in, or he could.
George Cardass is another one too. George Cardass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow, that's a name that I haven't seen in a long time. Galadorn, but that's strictly from another George Lucas product. But Willow. But yeah, Galt Renault. I'll say he's my favorite smuggler from the old Republic.
Oh,
Booster Terek. Yeah. Booster Terek definitely from New Republic. But yeah, Talon Card even it hits in the top 5 because he had one of my favorite animal species, the Vornskers.
Yes.
He was the one that had those Vornskers. It's like, so if I have to, or if I have any freaking Jedi or Force sensitive getting on my case, it's like, well, sick them.
Yeah. All right. So moving on here. So favorite new Jedi Order Jedi and why? There's not particularly any Sith there, basically, if you want to count Bashir.
Well, actually, Vergear.
Okay.
Because she's technically old Republic, but she has Jedi training. So now, if I can't pick her though, God, what was that Jedi or they were alive during the Old Republic as well. It was this 4-legged one that died during, or that got Anakin, Tahiri, and them off of, I believe it was Yavin,
Hmm.
before the Vong started terraforming there. I can't remember his name, though.
I know who you're talking about.
And I believe he was also 1,000 years old, too.
Hmm. He's one of the few that remained hidden and reemerged after
Yep.
Luke came back and restored the order. Because there are a few of them. It's
The
like not
little
even a handful. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
little puppy Jedi, as
Yeah, I can't think of the
Solo
name
assassin.
too. I'm
It's
like,
like, God dang it.
a little puppy
I
one.
gotta
Yeah. Yeah.
Google, who was that little puppy Jedi?
The puppy Jedi. Yeah.
It's like, no, or 404? No, I don't know. We have no clue.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one,
He's my favorite. I just don't remember his name.
yeah. Actually, to be completely honest, my favorite new Jedi Order is Anakin Solo.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
he is at the time the most powerful Force user. I'm a person that likes power, folks.
Yeah.
If
I
it,
think he was emergent to be. He wasn't quite as passed up Luke Skywalker yet, but he was being revered because of his wisdom. You know, he had his back and forth with his brother Jason Solo about how to use a Force and training with the saber and stuff,
yeah,
and all this other stuff.
Ikrit, Mr.
Mhm.
Pete
There you
got
go.
it.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Mr. P. Yeah,
Ikrit, yeah.
yeah,
But Anakin Solo, it's not so much yeah, he is extremely powerful, but this kid managed to create a freaking lightsaber crystal from Vong tech.
yeah. It took him a while too, which
He
from the
cultivated it.
yeah, from the I forgot the name of the tree now, but yeah, from the tree, and he learned how to bond with it for
Yep.
to be able to use it, because that in itself, like everything that the Vong did, had some used something that was sentient to help
Yeah.
them.
And
You
not
know.
only that, he crafted his lightsaber without an activation switch.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, nobody else can use this lightsaber
Yeah,
but me.
yeah. And then, so who is your favorite post Return of the Jedi Sith, and why? We start seeing after post Return of the Jedi, the Sith is starting to emerge into something different. So this can go all the way back into Legacy. Oh, no. Let's go not all the way back into Legacy era of the comics and stuff. Let's go all the way to like New Jedi Order and Legacy novels.
Honestly,
And that even includes Fate of the Jedi.
I haven't read anything past Legacy, so the Darth Crate them I would not know much about except for what I've read here and there.
Yeah.
So I would have to, or it does narrow the field to more like Cadus and Lamia.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I would say Lumia. I mean, Cadus would probably be an obvious choice, but Lamia is my choice because not only is she able to, or she's way more machine than Vader.
Mm-hmm.
She's like 75% machine. And she can still be extremely dangerous. Not only that, she has a light whip, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Screw your lightsabers.
Luke had to get a Shoto saber just to fight against her because of the light whip. He learned
has a light whip, that has several different tendrils, not just energy tendrils, but physical metal tendrils and other things. And yes, Luke needed to build a Shoto. I have that comic somewhere where he builds the Shoto against Shira and faces against her. Because I also used to have a figure of Lumia, which unfortunately snapped in two. But it was a comic that came with the figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was so for a light whip with Beskar tendrils. Only a Mandalorian would be crazy enough to try that shit.
Only a Mandalorian would be able to make the Beskar into that, because they're the only ones that really can manipulate and wield.
They're the only ones that know how to manipulate. I mean,
exactly. They have that special skill that no one could do, and that's why even though the Empire was interested in Beskar, they couldn't really use it to its
They
full
robbed the Mandalorians of all their Beskar and they couldn't do shit with it. So
I
it's
know,
like,
that's
put it in a
hilarious.
vault. We'll figure out something to do with it. But
Yeah.
it's like, I believe to touch on that for a moment, the Emperor wanted to use Beskar for the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if he was able to do that.
Mm.
Folks, Beskar it would take a lightsaber a few minutes to get through that. If say you're taking Beskar, right here, Beskar plate, lightsaber. If you stabbed it directly into the Beskar, it would take a few minutes to possibly even half an hour to pierce that Beskar with a lightsaber. That's why Mandalorians are so dangerous when it comes to Beskar, because they can take it. It's like, so that's a lightsaber, huh?
You just scratch
Please.
you just like put a little scratch in my Beskar. I can take care of that. Yeah. But now Disney lightsabers.
They have no idea how to use that stuff. It's like, we don't make it into weapons. The fuck you don't.
And then let me go ahead and make a weapon for
Sorry.
you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm like, are you freaking crazy people?
Anyway,
they have a word for sword, knife, and what cal. Oh, but
yeah,
anyway,
I know. We won't go there.
Yeah, we won't go there because
let's go back to the light side of Star Wars.
Yeah, let's go back to the better Star Wars,
Yeah.
real Star Wars.
Exactly. So, go ahead.
Where were we or before we transitioned to Beskar and stuff?
Okay.
Where were we?
We're basically, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one, though. Tell me, what do you think of the Sith evolution between the eras? So we get the Old Republic Sith, we get to the Brotherhood, then we get to Darth Bane, then we get into, it starts kind of like devolving once we get to Palpatine, and then we get, past that, which we then discover there's the lost tribe of the Sith who don't know what's going on in the galaxy, but they kept on living the Sith way. Then we have like Verger and Lumaya and that little evolution.
The offshoots. Yeah.
And then we also have Darth, we have our Sharad Het, who basically becomes Darth Krayt in the one Sith. So let me know what you think about the Sith evolution in your opinion.
Honestly, the Sith evolution all the way up to and through the Rule of Two, to the point of Palpatine, because he is excised from Rule of Two, in my opinion. Or if I could pick one word to describe it, it's adaptive. You had the Sith Empire. Well, they weren't getting it done. Mm-hmm. You had the Sith Brotherhood. They managed to push against the Empire, or the Sith, or the Brotherhood of Light, which was the Jedi, or the Army of Light, and they weren't getting it done. Well, then they needed to adapt further to the point where they disappeared entirely, and the Rule of Two line. Now, then we had that one Jedi that was the Rule of One, who is Sidious, but also Vergir was one of Palpatine's hidden apprentices, but then she decided to act a fool, try to kill him. So then she ran to Zonama Sekat and then hitched a ride with Vong. I would say that it was adaptive up to that point, but then it started to devolve because you had Sith from bygone eras come in. Vergir, she was a Sith. She was a Sith apprentice. But she understood that the Sith could rise in a way that could actually bring about another Sithari, which was, they thought, Jason Solo.
Right.
Wasn't exactly the case. But I do like how Lumia laid it out. It's like she was grooming you to become a Sith. And even she did it as well. So when the Sith were basically in flux, I call the Legacy series where the Sith are essentially in flux. It was interesting that the Sith tried to have a resurgence, but the other Sith that were on or in the background because they're mentioned in that series. That they come into the Fate of the Jedi series, I believe. I think you said they're the Lost Tribe. You said
The Lost Tribe of the Sith. Yeah.
yeah. They were basically staying in the background, and it's like we're gonna keep an eye on this Sith, this new one coming up, this Jason Solo, because he hadn't yet taken the Cadus name. And
Well, the Lost Tribe weren't keeping an eye on him. It was basically the one Sith that was being emerged by Darth Krayt during the time.
all right, well then
Yeah.
that would have been Krayt. But when Krayt came out, well, he was able to, or everything, the whole galaxy was in flux from what I understand. I haven't really tapped into that timeline yet. Ramage was not Tenebris's master. Tenebris's master is unnamed so far to only good games in the comment section. The hilt of the dark. We don't talk about that lightsaber. It doesn't exist.
All right. So,
But yeah, I think adaptive would be the best word to describe the Sith for the most part.
Yeah, and then we already talked about like the Jedi and how they failed to like evolve, and Yoda kind of puts himself at blame because he was one of the main people that helped carry on the legacy throughout, you know, his lifetime and stuff. And you know, we know that his species lived like almost 1,000 years. So, you know, so we have that little bit of that expansion there with Yoda and stuff. So we're coming up on 2 hours. I like to keep these within 2 hours here. But I have one more question for you, and I think this is a question that's I really want to get into a little bit before we close here, because of the fact that we have Andor and we have the forming of the rebellion in that lore and the form and during the dark times and stuff. So let's talk of the rebellion formation. What did you think of how the Corellian Treaty helped unite all the factions of, you know, that all the rebel factions that were going on during that time, and also Bal Iblis is splitting from it after, because he did split from it.
So, are we going by Force Unleashed, or
maybe a little bit of both? Because you know we have the Force Unleashed.
Because there were two different ways that the rebellion was created. If I remember
so
correctly.
you can even expand on both of them. Like the Corellian Treaty, basically Force Unleashed. You know, you introduced the Corellian Treaty that helped unite those planets, and then help create help, you know, unite the different factions of the rebels.
Now, while I like the Force Unleashed, I have both hardcovers. The Force Unleashed, where the rebellion was essentially actually created by the Empire, because it was Darth Vader who tasked Starkiller to like bring his enemy, unite his enemies, and it's like you wanted them to unite so that you could destroy them all at once. It's a stroke of genius in a way, but it's also kind of, it's like it would have been a little too easy, especially with the Emperor knowing who all of them were and whatnot. So it does make sense. It actually does make a lot of sense. Now, Force Unleashed 2, I wish they had done Force Unleashed 3, because I'd like to know how the hell Vader got away and didn't kill everybody. But the other rebellion, or way that they'd done a rebellion, was seeds of rebellion were being planted in episode 3. It was not expanded upon in the movie. There were deleted scenes, but in the book they were outright saying, it's like, or they even had Padme in it, and she's like, no, do not say anything more and whatnot, because she was actually against it for the most part. But after she saw what was going on, she what's up, Republic Yielder Gaming, good to see you. But she was, or told Bale, it's like, continue to do, or I want you to support his empire, but continue to do the stuff that we do not talk about behind his back.
Right.
And the rebellion essentially was grassroots until somebody basically brought him up. I'm not aware of the full the catalyst other than the Force Unleashed catalyst.
Yeah, and so what like it's Force Unleashed still stayed true to those plot points, in the book and stuff like that, and even the deleted scenes and stuff of we will remain like supporting so that we don't reveal ourselves. So if like Belle even says, if it looks like I support, it's because I have a reason to. That's Leia basically. I don't want to compromise. And they're like, basically, when the time is right, we'll know when the time is right. When the time is right, we will start, coming forward with, what we need to do to rebel, basically, to, fight for our freedom and stuff like that. So I think that, there's more than one catalyst that happens. Luke is the main one of the major ones. And I don't think that Force Unleashed really bothers that whatsoever, because I need some reason to say, okay, we're done with all the senatorial stuff and act like we're complaining. We're ready to take action now. We feel like we're stronger now. We feel we have enough factions to unite and to help us. We have the wealth of Alderaan. We have, Mon Mothma, who can rile up the soldiers. We have, Bel Iblis with the fleets. We can do this.
And we also have you with the Force,
right.
Starkiller. Now, a lot of people have actually said, or a lot of people actually try going after the EU, saying, because with the whole Kenobi series, to touch on that for a second, they're like, well, it makes sense that Kenobi, because they did it in the EU. It's like, Kenobi is a matter altogether. If he had to stay on Tatooine. It doesn't work with him. Having a different Jedi, like in this case,
anyways,
and so yes, he did die.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that the one in Force Unleashed 2 is a clone. It's actually a perfected clone, which is insanely one of a kind, because they said we cannot, or the Kaminoans said, we cannot clone Force sensitives. It is too unstable.
Yeah, and we see that, with Sabayoth and stuff like that. There's many accounts of them going insane and
yes,
beyond
because it shows how 1 in a million Starkiller's clone is. He is the only successful Force sensitive clone there is. Luke Skywalker from the Thrawn trilogy. I always kind of put a Luke because of the 2 U's. Kind of make it a Y sounding, but to differentiate. Even he was unstable. Saboth, or I always called him Saboth, or Sabayoth. He was, or a lot of people say he was unstable, which he was. But if you also look at the real Jorah Sabayoth, he was also pretty unstable himself.
Yeah, he had dark side. He was basically
and
if Palpatine would have known more about him, in a sense, I guess you could say, or would have took him in, he would have been a great acolyte or something for Palpatine.
Indeed. But it's because of Outbound Flight that he really couldn't use him.
Right, exactly. He was tasked to another mission and stuff. Yeah, so that's why I wanted to end this with the talk of the formation of the rebellion, because there was different factions of rebel factions, just like there was different Death Star plans, because the Empire did not want just one single plan in one place, especially when they knew that they were gonna the rebellion, the rebels were going to try to come and take them to try to destroy. That was good thinking on their part. Just like the rebels, they had to kind of stay secret. The main people had to stay secret in plain sight, basically. And but then we had different systems that had different factions of rebels, because they were tired of the bullshit. They were tired of being oppressed. All of this that the Empire was doing. They were tired of slavery. They were tired. They were just tired. And so the Corellian treaty basically was the formation of like, okay, we're going to combine everybody now. Now's the time is right. So I don't think that the Force Unleashed hurt any of the evolution of all these rebel factions and everything coming together. Just like
Really
I don't
didn't.
think that the Empire having plans in different destinations, locations, basically hurt, you know, when it came to like, you know, Kyle Katarn and Bria and all of them, you know, bringing in the plans, that didn't hurt the story either, one bit.
No, I actually liked the video game, the original Force Unleashed Part 2. Actually did a nice little trick of where they were trying to hunt down, or the 501st was going after the Death Star plans. Orange, where were you, or where would you have liked to have seen Star Wars go after Darth Krayt and Kate Skywalker? To be completely honest, I never read the comics up or into that universe. I do know the fate of some older characters from reading here and there.
Yeah.
I kind of really don't like how they settled C-3PO. C-3PO was found in a cave, reactivated by these kids. He literally tells them the entire story of Luke Skywalker and them, and then those kids blast him out of annoyance, and it's like, that's just not right.
Lost Jedi would love that. Greg would love that story. I forgot all about that. Yeah. So, but the people know, especially Soul Assassin and some of my viewers, and probably you do know this, but I like to assign homework. So I would love to see you read up on Legacy of the Force comics and get in that story and just let us know what you think about like the descendants of Ben and Luke and even Jaina and them and stuff like that, and you know the new emergence of, you know, the type of power that's going on during that time frame.
If I remember correctly, there's the Fell Empire,
right?
And I'm like, okay, if there's a Fell Empire, that means that somewhere in between Jaina and these guys, the Skywalker line kind of ruined the galaxy. Or put the galaxy back into a freaking conflict again.
Well, the Fell Empire wasn't a bad faction, really, because there was still. Yeah, so read into that. So that's all I'm going to say.
Definitely have to.
You figure out why, and then why, you know, if you've read Fate of the Jedi, or was it Legacy of the Force? There's hints of Jaina breaking off from the Jedi faction to create her own sister faction to the Jedi. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So I'm giving you homework. So we're going to start closing out here. My family's done at the event now. It finished up, and I think we might meet for dinner. So,
all right.
So tell the chat, tell the people who are watching on the replay where they can find you.
Well, you can find me at the YouTube channel at Orange Hat Reviews. I do entertainment stuff, movie reviews. I do live reviews, guest choice reviews, where if you want to come on to discuss a film, you could pick the time, the date, and the movie. Yeah. She's gone mad with power now. She's signing homework.
Yeah, you're your teacher, your EU teacher here.
Yeah,
I'm going to come up with glasses and you know, and like a blouse and all that stuff, and you know, be your EU teacher. No, but anyways, go on.
You could also find me on Twitter. I'm under 2 accounts: the Valkorian account, which this is the profile picture. I give my thoughts on different EU content on that Twitter page. You could also find me on the other one. Let me show you that one. My other Twitter account, which is Orange Hat Reviews, on this one. So, yeah, I am on Twitter. I mean, if you want to look me up on Facebook, you can find me there too. I do have a Minds and Getter. I don't really use them often. But yep, these are the main areas where you could find me. I do a lot of entertainment stuff and hope to see you guys on my channel. Thank you for subscribing if you have. And yeah, it's been fun here.
Yeah. And thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. I always find that there's a lot more to talk about, you know, so there might be part 2s later on within next year or something with some people I've already interviewed, but I'm always looking for people to interview for Talking EU so that we can hear their story, their life behind Star Wars and what got them involved as well. And this coming Thursday, no coffee chat.
Mm-hmm.
I was debating on if I was going to have one or not, but I'm not going to have time. I will be with family. I will be doing also my own thing of putting the turkey in and going to a gratitude yoga class just to help, just to help me get through the day and stuff, and just having fun with the family. And I want you guys to do that too as well. I might put a, happy Thanksgiving gratitude video out to you guys and post it. Other than that, no coffee chat. We will resume the following Thursday. And also, if you become a channel member between now and December, even up before the time I announce it, I am planning a watch party with channel members of the Clone Wars 03. Tartakovsky's Orange Hat is a channel member.
Yep, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so we're going to do part 1 or volume 1. And have fun, just channel member way of giving back for you guys' support here. And also, what else is going on? For right now, that's all that's going on. Oh yeah, one more thing is that I can't figure out why I forgot the name of the show I'm gonna do. But basically, I'm gonna review Star Wars concept art, whether it's from the movies or the novels or what have you, comics or whatever. Get behind the artists, get behind the creation of Star Wars through the arts. And so I think that's very important, because then you see the development and the genius of these creators, along with George Lucas, and creating this galaxy, this universe that we love and adore so much. So having an artist perspective on that. And thank you guys in the chat for coming in and tuning in. Please share, have people come in and catch the replay as well. All of your guys' support is greatly appreciated. And thank you again, Orange Hat Review, for coming on.
You're very welcome.
And you guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you.
The fate of the galaxy is now in your hands. With the new LEGO Star Wars Slave 1, you can load Captain Solo, arm your weapon systems, man the cockpit, and take off with the most feared ship in the galaxy. But watch out for rebel ships. No matter the enemy, no matter the firepower, you control the action. With the new LEGO Star Wars collection.
Another happy landing.